Today, I want to talk about 2 things you can do to make your memoir interesting. More on this coming up. Hi guys, my name is Wendy Dale. I'm the creator of Memoir Writing for Geniuses. Today, I want to talk about a couple of the things you can do to ensure that you're writing an interesting book. I work with lots of students, lots of writers, and they're always worried, is my book interesting enough? I'm just telling stories from my life. So today I want to talk about what you can do to make sure that these everyday stories from your life are actually interesting. So today I want to start with a story. I want to talk about what I learned when it comes to writing comedy. And this same lesson can be applied to your memoir. It can be applied when it comes to the question, how do I make my memoir as interesting as possible? So when I was in my early 20s, I worked in advertising. I worked in radio advertising for a man named Chuck Bloor, who was a legend in the business. I learned so much from him. He's really the only mentor I ever had. And one day he said to me, Wendy, there are 2 ways to write comedy. And you can either open funny doors or you can open regular doors in a funny way. So this was his lesson when it came to comedy. I was kind of expecting something a little bit funnier. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much wisdom, how much insight was actually in this really simple phrase, this really simple idea. So let me talk to you first about what it means to open a funny door. And again, I'm going to apply this to memoir writing in a second. This is not a lesson on how to write comedy. This is a lesson in doors. And I'm going to talk about interesting doors in a minute. So first of all, let's talk about funny doors and what he meant by this. So opening a funny door means you have a funny concept. If you have a family dinner and grandma accidentally ate your edibles, so now everything that grandma does is going to be funny because you've opened a funny door. The funny door is the concept, grandma is stoned. So if you don't have a funny door to open, what you have to do is take a normal door and open it in a funny way. So how would you do that? So that means you have a regular dinner. A regular dinner is not a funny concept. So how do you make that funny? So you're going to write funny dialogue. You might have people wearing funny clothes. The details are going to make this into a funny scene. The concept itself isn't funny. So you're going to need to find things in there, such as dialogue, that will make this into a funny scene. So funny doors or opening regular doors in a funny way. The same thing applies to your memoir. Now, you can basically open interesting doors or you can open regular doors in an interesting way. So what do I mean by this? Well, first of all, let me talk a little bit about what a door represents in your memoir. A door is basically a scene. Now, everything in your memoir is not scene writing. You have scene writing and transition writing. But scene writing is so important to your book because that is where your reader actually lives through events with you. So I would compare doors to your scenes. Your scenes are where your reader will actually live through the events that you lived through. With that in mind, you have 2 options here. You can open an interesting door or you can open a regular door in an interesting way. So you can either choose scenes that are really interesting to begin with, or you can take an everyday scene and write about it in an interesting way. So let me give you a few examples of what I mean here. So when it comes to writing your memoir, you always have to make choices. And one of the choices you need to make is what scenes you're going to use to tell your story. So let's take an event such as I moved from Miami to Minneapolis. Okay, so that's an event, but you're going to need multiple scenes to tell us this story. So that's the first choice you need to make. What scenes do I need to tell the story of I moved from Miami to Minneapolis? There's no one right answer. So this might be what you come up with. This might be your list of scenes. I pack up my boxes to ship. First scene, I pack up my boxes to ship to Minneapolis. Second scene, on the plane, I say a silent goodbye to Miami. Third scene, I open the door to my new house in Minneapolis. Is that the only way to tell the story of you moving to Minneapolis? No. You have to make these choices. We need scenes that tell the story of this move. You need to decide which scenes you're going to use to tell the story. Here's another option. You could tell the story of moving to Minneapolis this way. I get off the plane in Minneapolis. I take an Uber to my new house. I try to sleep the first night in my brand new place. Okay, so just to be clear here, these are scenes that I will eventually replace with text. This is not the writing in your book. So when I say I get off the plane in Minneapolis, what I will do is I will replace that with a scene, right? So I'll step out into the cold Minneapolis air. It will remind me of being a little girl. I have no idea. But so this is not the writing itself. These events will eventually be replaced with scenes. Again, there's no one right way to tell the story, but you're going to need to choose your scenes. And you need to ask yourself, what are the moments that I want my reader to live through with me? So this is a question of what are your most interesting doors? So when it comes to the story of moving to Minneapolis, what are the doors that you want to open? Pick the most interesting scenes. Pick the most interesting way to tell this story. So you ask yourself, what are the best stories I have? What are the best scenes I have? And when it comes to moving to Minneapolis, maybe the only interesting thing that happened was you sat on the plane next to a woman who told you about the time she almost made out with John Oliver. And that's a really good story. So that would be how you write the story of your move to Minneapolis. You might even start out your scene with, I will always associate my move to Minneapolis with the woman who told me she almost made out with John Oliver. And that is the scene that you give your reader. So that's what I mean when it comes to opening interesting doors. Pick the most interesting scenes. There are so many ways to tell the story of your move to Minneapolis. Which scenes are you going to let me live through? So your second option here is to open normal doors in an interesting way. And this is actually probably my favorite trick when it comes to memoir writing, because I think with memoir writing, when you use good prose, when you put us inside your head, you can really make everyday events really interesting. So what is going on inside your head can actually make an everyday event really interesting and can really affect your reader. So take, for example, the scene of I open the door to my new house. Okay, so if you're just watching that happen, that is not a particularly interesting scene. Insert key and lock and turn. But as a writer, you have this wonderful tool of narration. And narration can put us inside your head. So the act of opening this door, of inserting the key in the lock, can actually represent a lot of things. It could bring up childhood memories, or it could simply be that moment of understanding that your life has changed forever. This is a new beginning and you're leaving the past behind. I don't know, the writing is up to you. So opening the door, which is just such an everyday event, putting a key into a lock, can actually have this rich meaning. All of these things go through your head when you're opening the door. So, I didn't actually mean to pick opening a door in an interesting way, though I guess it kind of works. It's kind of literal, isn't it? You're actually opening a door in an interesting way. That's kind of cool. So how do you make your book interesting? You pick interesting scenes to begin with, or you take everyday scenes and you find a way to make them interesting. You make them interesting in the writing itself. I hope you found this video helpful. If you do, please click like or subscribe. And if you'd like a free class on memoir writing, there's a link in the description right below this video. Take care, guys.